Things with Batgirl just got a little batty. Here's your look at the new DC Collectibles. This is the DC Cover Girls Frank Cho Batgirl statue. Kicking off the newest series of DC Collectibles' famous DC Cover Girls line is Batgirl, designed by popular cover artist Frank Cho. Cho's take on Babs is witty and clever and gives a touch of humor to this 9-inch piece. Anyone who is a fan of Cho's covers and art will not want to miss this statue, which introduces him as the new artist for the line. Even though the packaging does list this as 9 inches in height, for my own personal satisfactions, I'm nonetheless going to take my tape measure anyways. I'm going to take it to the very top of what I believe to be Barbara's ears. Not her ears, the ears of the cowl. Reading this right, it's not quite 9 inches as the packaging would state, but instead 9.5 inches. Okay, we don't have to jump all over half of an inch, but it's 9.5 inches if you want to know the exact number. Switching that over to centimeters right now, you're looking at the statue of Frank Cho's Batgirl standing at 24.3 centimeters tall. Now, obviously, there are some fragile components involved in this statue. We will talk about those in a second. You probably already know what they are. But very carefully, in the meantime, I'm going to pick up the statue as best as I possibly can, because I certainly don't want to drop and break anything to it. The very top of the display base, this circular black display base, does have the Batgirl font along the top. And at face value, it looks like Batgirl with sort of a devil-horned T, until you look at it and realize in actual fact it's the shape of the Bat logo. How about that? It's all done in yellow, and it's slightly printed where it's raised above the surface of the base. So it's not simply just printed on top. I suppose it is probably printed. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's slightly a little bit more raised from the surface. And very carefully, let's not break and drop things right now. Out of a very limited run release of 5,000 pieces, this one, the one I own in my collection, happens to be 1,082. Yours, of course, will change if you're lucky enough to pick up this one for yourself. And you'll also be noticing as well, there's some rubberized feet, a total of 4, basically on the outer parameter of the circle. That's to prevent any scratching on surfaces if you're looking to pick up this one for yourself and display it on a shelf. I realized I just rhymed there. Anyways, moving along. Having a look at the statue itself, what a beautiful statue this is. I was extremely excited and counted down the days that my local comic book store actually would stock this one, because I knew, being a big Batgirl fan, this was one I definitely wanted to add to my collection, and I'm very happy that I did. Things, though, you do want to be very careful of if you're looking to pick up this one for yourself. You can probably already count them off on fingers 1 and 2. There are 2 very fragile pieces that you want to be careful of. If you are looking to pick up this one for yourself, check this first, and then hopefully you don't have any issues with these. But the 2 fragile pieces, obviously, number 1 is her little magnifying glass. As you can see, it magnifies. Well, it's see-through. It's certainly not magnifying anything, but it does have a see-through plastic to it. It's of a very thin nature, so be very, very careful of this. It's very nicely detailed in the sense that it does have a handle, although the handle sort of gets a little muddy and gooped in paint. You can see where it covers a little bit to the thumb. It's small enough, and from the angle that I'm planning on displaying the statue, probably like right around there, you're not really going to see it, but it's certainly something I do want to mention. There's probably going to be a little bit of excess paint added right there. Obviously, the other big thing that's going to be a potential breakage issue on this is the little tiny critter that joins Barbara along for the ride, this little tiny bat. Perhaps a vampire bat, perhaps just a regular bat. Nonetheless, bats, as bats go, tend to be very fragile in the wings, and this one being no exception. Oh, I don't even want to touch it for the risk that I may potentially break something on it. It's very nicely detailed, right down to the fact that they actually painted in the vein work on the wings. It's something for the size that it is. You don't expect them to actually go above and beyond to go in and paint the veins, but you can see they've actually done that. Well done. It's not quite even the same color either. It's more of a reddish color here and makes its way to a slightly more peach color as it gets to the coloring of the bat's body. You can see even that they painted in the eyes, the ears, the nose, and even the mouth. It's all there, ladies and gentlemen, but it comes at the price of being a very fragile piece. So we want to be very careful of that. I don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse and certainly always doom and gloom, but there are obviously things about statues, especially statues like this, you want to be very, very careful of. And this is definitely something you don't want to break. The trade-off, though, for as nice and, well, the trade-off for it being fragile is it's a nice-looking piece. The fact that the little tiny bat grabbing in, I don't know if those are claws or talons. Not sure. But it's grabbing Barbara's cape nonetheless. It looks like it wants to fly off with it, but you can see that Barbara's sort of perplexed as how a small little critter like this could make way with her cape, but you got to give him some credit for making the attempt. I like that the cape does have a natural pull. Obviously where the bat is pulling it sort of has now continued the pull and continued having the cape all moving in one direction. And it's reflected well here with the wrinkles that are forming based on the fact that the bat is obviously going this way here. We spin it around and have a close-up look at Barbara's face. Definitely one of the best Batgirl faces of recent memory. There's a whole lot of stuff going on here that we could talk about. We talk about the nice airbrushing that they've done around the eyes, the cheek area, and I might also even add the nose. There's a little bit of a rose color that they've put on top of her nose. It actually kind of feels to me, looking at it, like she's out in the cold. And of course, some of that, you know, the red nose, the red cheeks, things that you would automatically think of when you think being out in the cold. I feel like I'm getting a bit of cold Barbara Gordon standing out, protecting the streets. The reflective on the eyes is really a nice touch also as well. I must say I'm quite smitten. Probably hard to read, yes, but I'm very smitten by this head portrait. The paint on this girl, this gal, is fantastic. You got some nice panel lining done to the side of the cowl, which makes a continuation down the outline areas of her mouth. It's a nice little way to break up that you can see the cowl as a separate piece from the rest of the face. It's a not too broad of a line that it looks too jarring, but it's just enough that it does give a nice outlining around the eyes, as I said, around the nose and around the cheek area. Looking at her hair, it's very nicely done in sort of a caramel brown. Little accent areas, what seem to be more of an orange paint that they've added in there as well. I like that the hair isn't all bunched together. It fans its way across and kind of covers over the one shoulder section of Batgirl. Like, this is a statue where even picking this up, I feel like I'm so compelled to just start looking at different angles, the way I can display the statue. When we look at the front of it, and of course now she's looking this direction, you've got a very pale colored costume, very light on gray. Very classic Batgirl also as well, with a broad Batgirl emblem done in yellow, which mimics the same color in her gloves, the utility belt of course, and in her boots. The emblem is slightly lighter. It's not quite the same yellow as the rest, but for the emblem being a different color, I could chalk that up to being the emblem should be really a different yellow. I don't feel like it really should be. If it's printed onto the suit, I don't feel like it should be the same color as perhaps like cloth or leather gloves, you know, leather utility belt or leather boots. The yellow is done nicely as well, pretty clean for the most part. In fact, the paint is generally quite clean everywhere on this statue, except for maybe what I just mentioned earlier about the little handled section of the magnifying glass. There's, like I said, there's that little bit of paint that's just carried its way onto the glove. But other than that, everything on this is really nice and clean and pristine. Some small little details you probably can't even quite make out. There's a little Batgirl emblem done right there. Natural wrinkles forming where wrinkles should form. So the twist of the torso, for example, underneath the armpit, the area around the bicep, and even where the elbow bend, you all have naturally forming wrinkles. And I really do like that. Now, if you're watching this video, you might be thinking to yourself, something seems off on the waist down on Batgirl. She seems like she's not long enough in the leg. And you're not the only one that thought that. In fact, I thought that when I got this one out of the box. I knew what the pose was going to be. Obviously, I saw pictures online. But when I got it out of the box, it didn't seem like she was long enough in the leg. And I think, if anything, it's probably just your eyes playing tricks on you. You have to kind of tell yourself that the character's slightly leaned forward. She's bent at the top of her thigh, because obviously her leg is bent this way, and she's slightly bent also in the knee. If you had this character standing straight up, I don't think you'd have that same reaction. I think naturally her legs, I think from the top of her waist to her knee, for example, I think that's the right length. But I think what's throwing me off is this part right here. Basically from her knee, her calf, all the way down to the bottom of her feet. I think that seems like it's not long enough. But again, I think if you had the character standing completely straight up, you probably would see, in fact, that she is of a natural length, a natural height, and her legs aren't that short at all. I think what I really like about this statue is it bridges the gap between comic and reality. And let me explain what I mean by that. In a way, it kind of looks like I'm seeing an actress dressed up as Batgirl that somebody would have taken a photo of and then gone into like a Photoshop and cell shaded some of those details on her face and kept very much the rest of the coloring on her costume very simplistic. I think, again, that's what I really like about this. Did the costume need any additional shading? I don't personally think no. I think where they kept all the coloring in her cheeks and her nose, I think, is the key, while keeping the rest of it more comic rooted. And of course, a lot of the detailing also has been painted into the bat, and that feels very real world as well. It's a funny combination of the two that I personally find make this statue so successful with its presentation. You know, there's an old saying, if you've seen one, you've seen them all. Personally, I don't think that applies to Frank Cho's work on Batgirl in the comic pages, nor do I feel like that applies to this exquisite statue presented here from DC Collectibles. There's something very unique and special about this Batgirl versus maybe some of the others we've looked at on this channel. She's rooted in comic pages, yes, but there's sort of more of a realistic look to her face, both in the way that it's been sculpted and airbrushed, that I feel like this one feels a little bit more alive than some of the others, if that makes any sense. I like the fact that she's also decked out in her Golden Age classic costume. Really a nice touch. And even proportionately, the build of her body, she feels a little bit more rooted in reality than some of the other statues that we've looked at on this channel before. DC Collectibles has done an exquisite job yet again on another interpretation of the original artist's work. It's like a verbatim, a copy over completely of those comic pages in living statue form. The statue looks just as good out of packaging as it did when I first saw images surface online. The paint is very clean on this particular piece, and the details, as small as they are, even on the bat, it's incredible the fact that they were able to even put in the little vein work in his wings. Of course, the bats and as well the magnifying glasses are two talking points. Things I want to mention, of course, things you want to be careful of if you pick up the statue for yourself. Both the Batgirl magnifying glass as well as the bat, extremely fragile. So, of course, it goes without saying, be very careful when handling this piece. And if you are lucky enough to pick up this one in your local stores, check it and inspect it and make sure everything is okay on it. You definitely don't want to get it home and realize that something's broken on it, but at the very least, I would advise if you're looking to pick up a piece like this, as well as I've said with other statues in the past, best bet, pick it up through a store. That way you can always return it. It's a lot easier than picking this one up online, having then to worry about trying to ship it back to them. If you managed and you were lucky enough to pick up this piece for yourself, congratulations. You are an owner of a fantastic looking Batgirl. Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of this statue, even if you didn't get a chance to pick this one up, maybe based on this review and this review alone. Today we were having a look, though, at the DC Collectibles DC Cover Girls Batgirl by Frank Cho. What a marvelous looking piece. Probably one of the best Batgirls I have in my collection currently. If you guys are new to this channel, or maybe let's just say long-time viewers and never got around to it, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and keep your peepers peeled, because there's going to be a whole bunch of DC collectible reviews still coming soon to this channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.